There's a strange feeling many of us share, a quiet, persistent suspicion that someone has been meddling with the clocks. It seems as if the years are no longer the vast, sprawling territories they once were. Instead, they feel like short, hurried corridors we rush through without ever really seeing the details on the walls. Wasn't it just January? I can't believe it's autumn already. The sentiment is so common it's almost a cliché, a shared nod of agreement among friends and colleagues. This isn't a complaint about being busy. Not exactly. It's something deeper. The very fabric of time has changed. Its texture has become smoother and faster, slipping through our fingers. This sensation often grows more acute with age. When we were children, a single summer holiday could feel like an entire lifetime. Boundless days of exploration and discovery. The wait between one birthday and the next was a monumental test of patience. Now, birthdays seem to arrive with startling frequency, like regularly scheduled appointments we're never quite prepared for. The seasons don't unfold with the slow, deliberate grace we remember. They simply flip over, one to the next, as if a switch has been thrown. We look back at what feels like the recent past, a decade ago, perhaps only to be shocked that it was, in fact, 20 years ago. The math doesn't seem to add up with our internal, felt experience of it all. It's as if we're all passengers on a train that seems to be steadily, imperceptibly picking up speed. We look out the window, the scenery of our own lives is blurring past. Each station, each milestone, used to be distinct and memorable. Now the journey feels more continuous, the stops less defined, and we're left with a nagging feeling that we're missing something important. We glance at our watches, but they offer no comfort, ticking away at the same steady, indifferent pace. The mystery isn't about the clock on the wall or the calendar on our desk. Those instruments remain stubbornly consistent, measuring out seconds, minutes, hours with mechanical precision. The real puzzle lies within us. It's a question of perception. Why does the same objective unit of time, a year, a month, a week, feel so different now compared to before? We stand in the river of time, and it feels as though the current is growing stronger, pulling us along faster than we can manage. We are left to wonder if the river has changed, or if it is we who are changing in our experience of it. This accelerated sense of time isn't confined to getting older, though that's certainly one of its most common homes. It also seems to be a hallmark of modern life itself. We live in an age of unprecedented stimulation, a world saturated with information, notifications, and endless streams of content. Our attention is constantly being pulled in 100 different directions at once. One moment we're answering an email, the next we're scrolling through a news feed, and the next we're reacting to a message from a friend. This constant digital chatter creates a kind of temporal fog where individual moments lose their distinctness and blur into a continuous, humming flow of activity. The days can feel full, yet strangely empty when we look back. We might spend an evening flicking between a television series, a social media app, a conversation with a partner, only to feel at the end of it that the hours simply vanished. Where did they go? It's as if our attention was so fragmented, so thinly spread across multiple stimuli, that no single experience had the chance to anchor itself firmly in our consciousness. The result is a feeling of time that is both occupied and unlived. This contrasts sharply with moments of focused engagement, reading a book, having a deep conversation, walking in nature, which often seem to stretch time out, making it feel richer and more substantial. This leads to a fascinating proposition. Perhaps the perceived speed of time isn't about time at all. Perhaps it's really a story about our attention and our memory. It could be that the feeling of time speeding up is a side effect of how our brains process and store our experiences. When our lives are filled with routine and repetition, our minds don't need to work very hard to record what's happening. The daily commute, the familiar work tasks, the evening ritual, these events are so predictable that our memory can compress them into a single, efficient summary. A year of commuting can be mentally filed away as just commuting, taking up very little space in our recollection. And so, we are left to confront the idea that this acceleration of time might be a kind of illusion, created by the interplay between the structure of our lives and the mechanics of our minds. It's not that time itself has changed its physical properties. It's that our relationship to it has been altered. The more routine our days become, the less new information our brains have to process, and the faster time seems to fly by in retrospect. The more we fill our moments with fragmented, low-quality distractions, the less we have to hold on to. The vanishing year might not be a mystery of physics, but a mystery of psychology. To begin untangling this feeling, we need to make a clear distinction between two different kinds of time. On one hand, there is clock time. This is the time of physics, the objective, measurable, and unyielding progression of seconds into minutes and minutes into hours. It's governed by the steady decay of cesium atoms and the rotation of the Earth. This time is utterly indifferent to our feelings, our boredom, or our excitement. A minute spent waiting for a kettle to boil is, for the clock, precisely the same length as a minute spent receiving wonderful news. It doesn't speed up for anyone, and it doesn't slow down. This is the time that governs appointments, schedules, and the unalterable fact of our own aging. Then there is another kind of time, psychological time. This is the time of our inner world, our subjective experience. And this time is anything but steady. It's elastic, malleable, and deeply personal. It can stretch out to what feels like an eternity or shrink into almost nothing. We've all felt this elasticity. Think of a moment of intense fear or pain, a car skidding on a wet road, or a clumsy fall. In these instances, time seems to slow down dramatically. A few seconds can feel like a minute as our brain goes into overdrive, processing every tiny detail of the event. Our internal clock seems to expand, giving us more perceived time to react. On the other hand, think of a time when you were completely absorbed in something you love, a creative project, a sport, or a conversation that flows effortlessly. In these moments of flow, time seems to disappear. We look up, and hours have passed in what felt like a few moments. Our subjective clock has compressed the experience. The clock on the wall marched on with its usual stubborn pace, but we were so engrossed that we didn't notice its passing. Our inner sense of time was completely out of sync with objective reality, and we were quite happy for it to be so. This discrepancy is not a flaw in our perception. It is simply how human consciousness works. So, when we say that time feels like it's speeding up, we aren't making a claim about physics. We are describing a change in our psychological time. The problem isn't that the clocks are broken or that the universe has secretly hit the fast-forward button. The mystery lies in why our subjective experience of time's passage seems to be consistently accelerating over the long term. If a minute can feel long and a minute can feel short, why do the years, in retrospect, increasingly feel only short? The answer, it seems, has very little to do with the clock and everything to do with what our minds are doing from one moment to the next. Let's explore this idea of subjective time with a simple thought experiment. Imagine you're asked to sit in a quiet room with no clocks or devices and signal when you believe exactly 1 minute has passed. Most people are surprisingly inaccurate at this. If you're feeling bored, anxious, or impatient, you're likely to signal too early. Your internal clock is ticking faster than the real one, and so 60 seconds feels like a long, drawn-out wait. You experience more internal moments within that single minute, making it feel longer. Every thought of, "Is it time yet?" and every shift in your seat adds to the perceived duration. Now, imagine the same experiment, but this time you're given an engaging puzzle to solve. You become absorbed in the task, your mind focused on finding the solution. When you're finally interrupted and asked about the minute, you'd likely be surprised at how much time has actually passed. You might have been working for 2, 3, or even 5 minutes without realizing it. In this state of engagement, your internal clock seems to slow down. You're less aware of the passage of time itself because your attention is directed elsewhere. The minute on the wall is the same, but your experience of it is completely different. It has become shorter, more compressed. This simple contrast reveals a fundamental principle. Our perception of time's length is not a passive recording of an external reality. It's an active construction, heavily influenced by our mental state. It's shaped by how much information we are processing and, crucially, what kind of information that is. When our attention is turned inward, focused on the passing of time itself as in the boring room, time stretches. When our attention is turned outward, absorbed in an activity, time contracts. This isn't just a curious psychological quirk. It's a core feature of how we build our sense of a life unfolding. This brings us closer to understanding the feeling of an accelerating year. If our days are filled with activities that absorb us without being particularly memorable, or if they are filled with low-grade, repetitive boredom, our experience of time will be distorted. A day packed with routine tasks can feel busy in the moment, making the hours fly by. Yet, when we look back, the lack of distinct events means there's nothing for our memory to hold on to. The day, the week, and eventually the year can feel both full and empty, rushed yet insubstantial. It's this combination that creates the illusion of acceleration. Our feeling about the speed of time isn't just shaped in the present moment. It's also profoundly influenced by how we remember the past. Memory is not a perfect video recording of our lives. It's more like a ruthless editor, cutting out everything it deems unimportant, stitching together the highlights, anything that is routine, predictable, familiar. It operates on a principle of efficiency. Why would it waste precious storage space on the 10,000th time you've driven to work, when that experience is almost identical to the 9,999th time? It's far more economical to create a single, generic file labeled commute. This process of memory compression has a powerful effect on our retrospective sense of time. When we look back at a period of our lives that was filled with routine, our memory presents us with a heavily abridged version of events. A year spent doing the same job, living in the same place, seeing the same people, might be condensed into just a few key scenes. The thousands of hours of predictable activity evaporate, leaving behind a narrative that feels startlingly brief. What did I even do that year? We might wonder. The time was lived, second by second, but it was not stored in a way that gives it length in our memory. Now, contrast this with a period of intense novelty, like a month spent traveling in a foreign country for the first time. Every day is packed with new sights, new sounds, new experiences. Our brain has to work hard to process and encode all of this unfamiliar information. There are no routines to fall back on, no predictable patterns. As a result, memory creates a rich, detailed, and lengthy record. When we look back on that month of travel, it can feel as if it lasted much longer than a typical month at home. It takes up more space in our mental archive, and so we perceive it as having been a longer, more substantial period of our lives. This is why childhood summers often feel like they lasted forever in our recollection. The first time swimming in the ocean, the first time climbing a particular tree, the first time tasting a new kind of ice cream. Each of these moments is a distinct and memorable event that the brain carefully catalogs. The sheer volume of new data being recorded stretches our memory of that time. As we get older, we accumulate a vast library of experiences, and the number of true firsts dwindles. Our lives become, by necessity, more routine, and our memory's editor becomes more aggressive. As that editor grows more selective, entire stretches of life begin to fold inward. Weeks collapse into a single impression. Years reduce to a handful of reference points. The lived experience was full and continuous, but the stored version is condensed. When we look back, we aren't reviewing time itself. We're reviewing what survived the filter, and that's where the strange sensation begins. If fewer moments stand apart from the background, the past feels shorter. If experience blends into repetition, it loses scale. The calendar hasn't changed, the clock hasn't shifted. What shifts is the density of what we remember. The feeling of acceleration may have less to do with time moving and more to do with how much of it leaves an imprint, which raises a quieter question. If the years feel like they're shrinking, what determines whether a moment expands or disappears? And maybe what feels like acceleration is simply the difference between passing through time and participating in it.